Jake, there's one thing that we must never forget to do every day, and that is wipe.
Whenever you bring up your old adages from the past, I just can't help but be so thankful to have you here to walk me through just the knowledge that you've accumulated over the years. Today, we're going to talk about the most important wiping that you can do, and that is board wiping. And the video starts right now. Highest level of gratitude to our patrons who power the channel through Patreon. Check out the Patreon link in the description to learn about monthly giveaways, VIP Discord access, and even our official playmat. Hello and welcome to the day.
Thank you for spending your time with us.
I'm Jake.
I'm Joel. Welcome back to another episode of Jake and Joel Are Magic. We are going to talk about board wipes because, wow, did we have a fantastic one just printed in Midnight Hunt that needs discussion about it because it's so fantastic. But before we jump into the board wipes, if you would, think about clicking that like button by the end of the video if you like it, and click that dislike button if you don't.
It's the best way to support the channel with just the click of a button. We've got 20 cards to briskly get through today, so there is no time like the present. Let's go ahead and jump into these cards and talk about the card that this video is all about.
Jake, coming to us from Midnight Hunt, we have got what I looked at, and in my head, for the very first time I saw it, went, oh my god, is this the best board wipe that's ever been printed? And it's Vanquish the Horde.
Commander.
For Commander. Obviously, yes. This is a Commander video. But this card, Jake, destroy all creatures straight up. Great, love it. But it costs one less to cast for each creature on the battlefield. So it's like the blasphemous act of Wrath of Gods.
Yeah, it's the white blasphemous act. That's how I feel about it as well. You know, most of the time when you cast blasphemous act, spoiler, that's a card that's going to be in this video as well, so stick around. You don't need to go anywhere. But yeah, most of the time in Commander, when you cast Blasphemous Act, it's for such a small amount of mana, and it's because typically in a game of Commander, you have 4 players and everybody's casting creatures, so this cost gets reduced, and this card likely in games of Commander is going to be cast for 2 a lot of the time, most of the time. Yeah,
I would say so. I mean, you're never going to cast it for 8 because that would be destroying all creatures on a board without creatures. And so that's not a thing. So yeah, I think you're dead on. I think a lot of times it's just going to be a 2 mana destroy all creatures for sorcery speed. And then you're able to rebuild your board. And that's an important part of Commander strategy, is not just to wipe the board and then pass, unless you are literally in just like emergency all missiles fire mode. You need to be reestablishing your board position after you wipe the board off. And so at 2 mana, this very much allows you to do that. So Jake, we know this one is fantastic, maybe top tier up there in the conversation at the very least, but the litmus test for board wipes is Wrath of God. This is what all of them are compared to.
Right. Typically in MTG, a board wipe is going to be based around this mana cost of 4. You know, it's a balanced cost, which takes into account aggro decks and stuff like that. How much damage can you do on turn 1, 2, 3, and 4 if you're able to curve out into a board wipe, right? A lot of the time, if a board wipe is like a 3 cost or a 5 cost, the 5 cost is going to have a little bit of an additional perk to it, whereas a 3 cost might come with like a drawback, right? So Wrath of God being, this is the white board wipe. This is the OG. Destroy all creatures that can't be regenerated, and Damnation is the exact same thing, except it's in black. Destroy all creatures, they can't be regenerated.
2 different sides of the same coin, but this is what board wipes are compared to more often than not. This is the baseline. What is it? Is it more than 4 mana? Is it less than 4 mana? And what are the drawbacks, or what extra do you get if you're spending more mana? So Jake and I, those are the first 3 of the 20. We've got 17 others that are really format defining. They're all strong in different ways, and we want to go through them and talk about why they are strong. Jake, planar cleansing, this is sort of like the end of the equation, right? If you've got Wrath of God at 4, that's the baseline, the defining board wipe. Planar cleansing is sort of the top of line definer there. You can pay 6 mana in a very specific color to destroy all non-land permanents, period. So this is just like everything, including creatures, completely gone.
Right. Your artifacts, your enchantments, your planeswalkers, tokens, everything, creatures. for 2 extra mana.
Right.
So that's the reason why we included it on the list, because it really is like the biggest catch-all of just like, well, let's expand outside of creatures, everything but lands. Yeah, pretty strong card here.
Yeah, and so that's sort of what you need to think about is 4 mana to destroy all creatures, 6 mana to destroy everything.
But
Jacob,
now let's break that card up, right?
Right,
so
exactly.
we just looked at planar cleansing. Now here is essentially that exact same card, kind of like dissected minus planeswalkers, but yeah, you can kind of see from a design standpoint like where they're going here. I really love this card just because versatility is key in EDH. We love versatility. Being able to pick and choose which creatures you destroy based on your own board state is sometimes very advantageous, and the same can be said for artifacts and enchantments. So being able to choose 2 of these based around what is going to leave you in the best position is obviously the best way to use this card.
Exactly right. Destroy all the small creatures and wipe their enchantments. You know, you can mix and match with Austere Command, and that's why you're paying a little extra, is because you've got the versatility of choice on this card. With Supreme Verdict, you've got Wrath of God. It's still at 4 mana, but you're paying 1 other color of mana in there, so it's making it a little more mana restrictive, and it's only in some EDH decks playable now. But Supreme Verdict adds the 1 blue mana in instead of 1 of the generic mana to not be counterable.
Pretty sweet card here. I like this card a lot. If you are in blue and white, this is an absolute must include, in my opinion. If you're in those colors, it's a board wipe that is 100% getting through. It's just going to get through.
Right. Yeah, exactly. In between the 4 mana point and the 6 mana point, Jake, we've got Cleansing Nova.
We have choose 1, so versatility again, destroy all creatures or destroy all artifacts and enchantments. So a card that we're going to look to here is Austere Command that we were just talking about. So where Austere Command, with the choose 2, you can do artifacts and enchantments, or you can do creatures that are 3 or less or 4 or greater. Well, here it's just creatures or artifacts and enchantments. So very fun card. Again, versatility in this format is fantastic, but this is a card that you would consider for a little bit more redundancy along the same line.
Right. Yeah, I think of it as just a Wrath of God that you're paying 1 extra mana for versatility in your deck. So if you need to, artifacts and enchantments can get bonked off the battlefield.
Right. And then next up we have Time Wipe. So another 5-cost board wipe, but this time for that extra mana. And for blue, you're able to bounce a creature that you control. So you're returning something to your hand, and then you're destroying the board, which is a very flavorful design of this card. You know, blue typically has your bounce spells, your unsummons, and that kind of stuff. So it makes that much sense. It makes a lot of sense that this card would save a creature that you control.
Yeah, this is important, working back toward that main point that I want to make with these board wipes, which is establishing a position, reestablishing a position afterward, hopefully in the same turn that you cast that board wipe. And so, you know, if you've got a 3, 4, 5 mana creature on the battlefield, you cast this for 5 more, you're recasting that creature. If it's got ETB, that's more value there, but at the very least you saved it and you're reestablishing your presence on the board while destroying all of your opponent's stuff off the battlefield. And Jake, versatility, Nevinyrral's Disc is like the most versatile of these for some reason.
Yeah, Nevinyrral's Disc, you know, this is a card, and it's funny, we'll give you a little behind the scenes, but this was a card that we contemplated cutting. But the reason that we didn't is because it kind of represents board wipe for the decks that don't have it. So whereas we're talking about Wrath of God and we're talking about Damnation and what are, you know, white and black effects, this is the board wipe for the blue deck, for the green deck, for the red deck, right? I mean, you have to like use the disc, and it's clunky. It comes in, it's slow. If you don't have a way to untap it and use it immediately, it has to make it through a turn. What I like about this card is it kind of operates a little bit as like a standstill as well, a little bit of a stall button. Everybody sees it, and if there isn't an answer for it, it kind of slows up the game a little bit. People start to play around it.
The versatility piece is the fact for me that it can go into any deck, and I think that is what makes it such a highly played card to this day. As far as mana rate of return, it's actually really good because Planar Cleansing is 6 to destroy everything. This hits everything except for permanents, except for planeswalkers, but it does come into play tapped. So
that's what it is. It's that ETB tap. Yeah.
You're paying 1 less mana than Planar Cleansing, so you're beating the rate, but You have to either figure out a way to untap an artifact so you can use it that same turn, which is not that difficult, or you have to wait until it comes back around. But yeah, I like Nevinyrral's Disc as sort of like a neutral. It's like the Swiss of board wipes. It's just, it'll go into any commander and it does the thing that you want it to do.
This is kind of like Austere Command, except it destroys all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. You don't get to choose. However, it has cycling built in. So early game, you might be behind. Just cycle this away, dig through your deck. Maybe you're just trying to dig for lands or other spells that you can play. The versatility of being able to cycle this away to draw a card when you don't need it is why this is on the list. So if you're already playing Wrath of God, if you're already playing Cleansing Nova, if you're already playing, other board wipes, Supreme Verdict, and you need extra board wipes, if that's your theme, Akroma's Vengeance should 100% be on your radar.
By the way, don't be running board wipes just to be running board wipes. Make sure it's working toward a win con. Nobody wants to sit there and just have the board go longer because you happen to reset it. That being said, I love cycling. Cycling and flashback are two mechanics for me that every time they pop up, you're automatically looking at more viable commander cards because you can cycle it away out of your hand early. Flashback, you can flash it back and use it again late. Getting extra effects off of this type of stuff is fantastic. Akroma's Vengeance has been here since the beginning of us playing EDH, and I've always loved it. I've always been a big fan of it. Jake, Toxic Deluge is coming at it from a little different angle. You're paying life in addition to the just 3 mana that you're paying, and all creatures are getting -X until end of turn, where X is the amount of life you paid. It gets around indestructible. You can control it. You can save your creatures if they are higher toughness than all of your enemies' creatures. But the bottom line to this is that life is one of the most expendable resources in Commander. So who cares if you're paying life on Toxic Deluge? And it's only 3 mana, so you are able to start rebuilding a board position almost immediately.
Yeah, and like we talked about earlier in the video, let's talk about how great a cost this is for simply having a 3-cost board wipe, right? So we were talking about the drawback that comes with it being a 3-cost board wipe compared to a 4-cost, and the expense is you have to pay life. Now what's cool is you get to pay an amount of life based on what's on the board. You get to do it in the moment based on what you see. This is sorcery speed. Imagine if it were instant. Oh my gosh, it would be such a crazy card. But anyway, it's already still a crazy card, and it is a top tier board wipe despite the life that you have to pay. I mean, it's just that good. And if you don't see it, just trust us. It is very strong. Next up, we have Damn, and this is a card that I'm happy is on the list as well, because we are talking about a new board wipe that just came out of Midnight Hunt, but we're also able to talk about this board wipe, which is also new, that just came out of Modern Horizons 2, and it's a very fun card as well, and it's the versatility of having a destroy target creature spell and a board wipe all bundled in together.
Yeah, if you're just trying to get one creature that's pesky off of the battlefield, but you don't want to remove your entire board state, you can just go with the 2-black version of this sorcery speed spell and destroy that single creature. Plus, it also has that, clause of it can't be regenerated in there. That's much less applicable today in today's commander design state than it was, 5-10 years ago. But it's not nothing. And then if you do have no board presence or a board state that you don't mind losing just to wipe out 2 other opponents' board states, creatures based wise anyway, just overload it. And it's a Wrath of God. It's like this Wrath of God tied to a Doomblade that's not color restricted because you have to pay 2 of the same color of mana instead of a generic, right? That's sort of how that's those two things stapled together.
Yeah, I mean, the only drawback to this card at all is that it's restricted to a black and white deck.
Right.
But otherwise, I see it as a kill spell first that becomes a board wipe later. Like the kill spell is great. Would I rather it be instant speed? 100% I would. I mean, most of the best kill spells are. Most kill spells, most spot removal does not come with a Wrath of God later, just in case when it becomes its final form, let's call it that. Since
right.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic card. It's really cool, and there's a reason why this card is so popular from MH2. Now, this card has been around for a while. Merciless Eviction, 1 black, 1 white, 4 other for a nice choose one. So now we have a 6-cost board wipe that is straight up exile all artifacts, exile all creatures, exile all enchantments, or exile all planeswalkers. This is the first card I think tonight that has exile on it. Right,
Correct.
Joel? This is a very powerful effect in EDH.
Right. That is a big reason of why I wanted to include it in this video. If it was choose one, destroy, instead of exile down those 4 modes, I think there would have been less willingness to say this is in the top 20 for us. But because it says exile all, that is huge. Get them out of the game. No recursion for you, Marin deck.
No
I'm
graveyard.
Sorry.
No,
right.
Yeah. Exactly.
No, open the vaults and get all your enchantments back. They gone. We are evicting them. We are merciless and they gone. I'm a big fan of this one, Jake, especially this mode that's just got it very simply. All the modes on there. I like the typesetting of this text box on merciless eviction. It's a good 6-cost one. And Jake, here is the best red one. One of the only true red board wipes. There's a lot of like deal 3 to everything, that kind of stuff. Earthquake, you can dump X in and it doesn't hit flyers.
Sure.
But Blasphemous Act, Jake, 13 to each creature. There are not a lot of creatures in the history of MTG that are going to be able to dodge this damage as lethal damage to kill it. And it's much like our new one from Midnight Hunt. You're not going to cast this for 9 ever because that makes no sense.
Right.
Only, dude, in my experience, this does not get cast for more than like 3. More than like 2.
Like 3 max. And sometimes you're casting it for 1 and you're able to rebuild very quickly. So like Joel, this video has been talking about, at least for him, the importance of being able to rebuild a board state.
Win the game.
After doing a board wipe.
Don't just make it long. Right, exactly.
Right. So having the Blasphemous Act, being able to do that for 1, clear everything up, and then follow that up with something like, on turn 6 even, like a 5-cost, is a pretty big deal. And this is such an amazing card. I remember when this was printed all the way back in Innistrad, and then we first discovered how good it was in EDH. We were like, whoa, wait a second. This card is just amazing. Right. Yeah. And it has been ever since. For a decade later, it is still just that good. And I can't imagine that we'll ever take it off the list. So if you don't have a copy of this card, if you're playing red in EDH, go get a copy of it. And next we have Ingress Wake. So this is just destroy all creatures you don't control and all planeswalkers you don't control. So big, hefty cost. This is a 9-cost. So you need to be in big mana, whether it's fast mana, whether it is ramp, whatever. But this is everything you don't control. So you are expending a ton of mana, but you still have your board state.
You're keeping your entire board state, and that's really what this one comes down to for me, because I look at Wrath of God and my main point is play this 4 mana, play this 3 mana, play this 2 mana board wipe, a cheap one, so that as soon as you've board wipe, you can start reestablishing before you pass. So it's not just board wipe, you go, and you've got to sit through 3 players starting to rebuild before you get to start casting things. Ingress Wake says, all right, so Wrath of God is 4, and then maybe you want 4 or 5 more mana on top of that to start your rebuild. Ingress Wake says, let's just go ahead and pay all of that at once, 9 at the same time, retain your board state, and wipe theirs completely of creatures and planeswalkers. So it's not even just creatures. We're getting like a 5 mana wipe spell being destroy all creatures and destroy all planeswalkers. That's feasible, but it would cost 5 or 6 mana. And then a few more mana, we get to keep our stuff. I think this one's fantastic. Obviously, like Jake said, it's a high converted, and you cannot reduce this based on the card itself. It can't reduce itself like Blasphemous Act or like Vanquish the Hordes. But at 9 mana, this is one of the few big mana, wipes that I would say, yeah, there's a case to be made.
It's
and
worth
especially,
it. There is a case for it. Like
this is kick ass in Lathril.
Right. Like there are certain ways to make this happen early as well. Anytime that you can tap a dork for mana, there are ways to do it. But yes, this is a very strong card, and it placed on this list with purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got another big mana removal board wipe here at 8 for Decree of Pain. It destroys all creatures that can't be regenerated, so you got your 4 for Wrath of God, and then basically you're paying 4 mana on top of that to have a card draw happen for every creature destroyed this way on the battlefield. Again, you're not casting this when there's 2, 3, 4 creatures on the battlefield. It's really when you get into that 5+ that you're really wanting to drop that 8 mana board wipe. But, you know, refilling your hand, that's not a bad reason to play this. But Jake, it's really the cycling ability that made us put this on the list. You can cycle this away if you don't want to spend the 8. You can just cycle it away for 5, eat up everything that's 2 toughness or less. All mana dorks gone. And you're replacing it into your hand. So it's 5 mana to discard it, wipe all the 2 toughness and fewer creatures off the battlefield, and replace it in your
speed,
hand.
No less, which is cool.
Exactly.
You know? So it can be a really interesting combat trick as well. If it comes down to being able to, you know, just get a couple of your opponent's creatures, a few toughness away, just 2 toughness away, if it's there, if it's possible. But yeah, being able to blow everything up. Again, versatility is a big theme on this list that we're talking about today with these cards. A lot of modal cards, or in this case, another card with cycling. But yeah, very strong card here, but it is very top heavy.
Oh yeah, absolutely it is. But that's what you start getting into when you start getting further down the list of still playable board wipes. Jake, this one lets you split up the mana cost a little bit.
Yeah, kind of cool. So Fortel here, like we were just talking about a couple big mana ones, this is going to allow you to cast a destroy all creatures spell for 3. However, you do have to foretell it away for 2 on a previous turn. So then later on, this card will be face down, and you can, for 2 white and 1 other, destroy all creatures. This is going to help with the build back state as well. If you're blowing up the board for 3, then you're going to be able to cast more spells, whereas typical board wipes are going to cost 4. However, yes, you do have to split it up over time, but a good card, and again, a card that I think if you do need extra board wipes is one very much worth considering.
Besides the very first card on this list from the set that's not even fully released yet at time of shooting this, this is the card that I've played with and played against the least on this list. I do think it's got a lot of viability. Essentially, you're getting a +1 mana Wrath of God in your deck, but you do have the ability, because you're potentially paying 1 more mana, to split it up and, you know, later in the game destroy all for 3 and then have more mana to start rebuilding. I think it's got a lot of potential, and I do think it belongs on a list like this. But
if you don't have if you have like extra 2 mana left over, then why not foretell it away? Right?
Exactly.
It's just mana efficiency. That's why the card works.
Yeah.
Now we have a big card here. Eugene the Spirit Dragon, 8 mana. And a little bit of a curveball, I know, because a lot of the cards we've been talking about today are sorceries, you know, maybe an instant or 2 in there. But this time we have Ugin the Spirit Dragon, and we're going to specifically focus on that -X, which is exile each permanent with converted mana cost X or less that's 1 or more colors. So this is, in essence, a board wipe here. You may have to uptick a couple times if you're trying to get higher cost permanents, but there's a lot you can exile that is 7 or less.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can sort of control it. Eugene is one of my big eye roller cards. I don't like to put this card into decks because it's one of those, it's kind of like Nevin Euro's Disc, right? You can just go into any deck, and most EDH games go to 8 mana anyway, regardless of what deck you're playing. So it's like, cool, you cast Eugene, you -6, Eugene survives, you probably got almost every permanent on the battlefield, and then you can just start ticking him up every turn to deal 3 damage to
whatever didn't survive, right?
Either if a creature didn't survive, maybe it's got 3 or less toughness. If, you know, you start rebuilding, start playing any mana dork creatures, those all can get aced, or it can just start lightning bolt players in the face and try and get the game over. Eugene is partially a board wipe, and so we did want to kind of include looking at this from as many different angles as we possibly could on this list for board wipes. But I mean, Jake, it's another one that says exile, and it hits each permanent. You know, the downside I see to this is, number 1, it's 8 mana, so it's a little expensive. And number 2, it does not hit artifacts at all. It's all anything colorless, devoid artifact. It's not going to hit that
mana
stuff.
crypts, soul rings, all of that stuff is going to dodge it.
Right.
Thankfully,
All
that kind of
survives.
stuff can't swing and win the game, right?
True.
But there are going to be some times where artifacts can get in and will have an advantage over Ugin. But I do think a lot of the time Ugin is, I mean, if they don't have a board state, you can just get it out there, 7 loyalty, tick it up, and just start shooting stuff, or like you said, players. It's just a very big, beefy target that just happens to have a pseudo board wipe built into it.
The last note I want to make about Eugene the Jackass, Spirit Dragon, is that you can -0, Jake, and really hose token decks. As long as those tokens have color, which most elves are creating green elf tokens, white human tokens if you're in that deck, black zombie tokens. This is the kind of thing you can play this 8 mana screwball here and have a 7 loyalty walker on the battlefield that after you -0, you're exiling all of the tokens off of the battlefield.
And we don't even have to talk about Painter's Servant.
Oh, man. Yeah, there you go. So Eugene, the Spirit Jerk-Off, is a thing. He is a thing, really, and he exists. Jake, here's another thing that exists, and this looks at it from a different angle, which is a 1 cost, not destroy, not quite exile, but something in between.
It does wipe the board, though.
Yeah, it puts all creatures on the bottom of their owner's libraries. So, probably never to be seen again.
Yeah, most likely never to be seen again, or they need to go in and tutor them up however they need to do it. But yeah, for Miracle, so, think about your Sensei's Divining Tops or any type of spells that are going to allow you to scry. Shout out to Crystal Ball, one of my favorite cards of all time. But yeah, being able to tinker the top of your library, order this in such a way, this is extreme mana efficiency. If you can get this off for the Miracle cost, I mean, that's exactly what Joel's been talking about the whole time. From that one perspective, this is like the best board wipe ever for creatures, as long as you can always cast it for that Miracle cost. But that said, yeah, it's a 6 cost sorcery to put all creatures on the bottom of their owner's libraries, which again is more attractive than a straight up destroy spell.
Yeah, if you look at the floor of this, 6 mana to exile all creatures. We're going to say exile, even though we know it's pseudo exile. They can still be tutored up or, even milled again, maybe somehow if you they shuffle their library, mill them off. But, that's not a terrible
out of the game
floor.
For now.
Right, exactly. That's not a terrible floor. The graveyard's much more accessible. The bottom of the library is very inaccessible, and exile is inaccessible. So I think that having a floor of 6 mana, put all creatures on the bottom of their owner's libraries, is not that bad of a price to pay for the potential of a Terminus popping up. Miracle costs 1 mana. You're absolutely rebuilding that turn, and those creatures are pretty much completely gone.
And then there was All Is Dust. Each player sacrifices all colored permanents they control for 7 generic mana.
This is the other end of it, right?
Just straight up.
1 more mana than Planar Cleansing. It won't hit artifacts, anything devoid, artifact creatures, doesn't hit those. But at the same time, it is a sacrifice force. And so, indestructible, you'll have no power here.
That's right. No power here, indestructible creatures with or permanents or whatever. This is a sacrifice spell. This is a first sacrifice spell that we have on the list tonight. The main thing about this card, whereas we're talking earlier about board wipes that are 4 cost, this is 7 cost, and for that extra 3, we're getting sacrifice as well, and we're getting a versatile spell that can slot into any color. That's the big thing about these big, splashy, colorless spells. A lot of the time, WotC recognizes, well, these are effects that are going to fit into decks that don't typically have these effects, and so we have to make the converted, we have to make that mana value high to reflect those powerful effects in decks that shouldn't typically have them.
When I saw Vanquish the Horde in this set, it got me really excited about what board wipes it was going to beat as far as best on the list. And Jake, honestly, if it's not number 1, it's in the top 4 or 5, right?
Yeah, I would have to say so. Obviously, I'm sure you watching, you're ready to let us know what board wipe is your favorite. I do think that this one is going to join the top tier ranks alongside Blasphemous Act, stuff like that gets that reduced cost and just in EDH becomes just so much more potent.
Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button on your way out if you liked the stuff, of course. Other than that, I'm tapped out.
Until next time, we will see you next time.